An MP is defending the plight of two homeless single mothers forced into emergency accommodation, saying both have spent time at a women's refuge in the past year and they've run out of options. Documents obtained by Checkpoint show landlords have taken the two women to the Tenancy Tribunal on 6 separate occasions for rent arrears and damage to property, the most recent case in September last year. But Dunedin South MP Clare Curran, who's been camping in the city's Octagon since Sunday night to protest the women's plight, told me via Live View that both women have young children, one is pregnant and neither have anywhere else to go.
This is the precarious situation they're in, that they are both on the list for a Housing New Zealand house, but essentially every time they go in for their appointments, they're being grilled about, whether they're in a relationship, how many houses, private rentals have they been looking at. They came to my office separately last week in tears. One of them, who's pregnant, 26 weeks pregnant, ended up in hospital last week with early contractions because she was so stressed. And I think I've, sort of spat the dummy really and said enough is enough, which is really why I'm sitting here after 2 cold nights in a tent, because I want them to get a house and I want work and income to treat them properly, and that's basically it.
It's a bit of a tricky one though, isn't it? Because they're not exactly what you call model tenants. I mean, between the two of them, they've been to the Tenancy Tribunal 6 times in the past 8 years, and each of them have been last year. What's the solution there?
Yeah, well, it's interesting, isn't it? One of the reasons that people are put on the list for a Housing New Zealand house is because they simply can't afford a private rental, or because the private rental market is really not suitable for them, often because they're described as credit risks. This happens in any MP's office all over the country. These two women have been brave enough to actually go public, and as a result their pasts are being poured over by pretty nasty people actually online, making horrible judgments. Now, I could go into details about those tenancy tribunal cases. I'm not going to give too much because, I do believe in their privacy, but they have said, and I think they are willing to say publicly, that both of those young women ended up separately in women's refuge in the last few months. And as a result, because their names were on the respective leases of their houses, that they ended up with the debts and the costs and the, the judgments that go with that.
What is the solution here? What would you like to see ultimately happen, not just to these women, but to with the system?
Yeah, well, you see, I'm not here to make moral judgments about people, and it really annoys me that those moral judgments are being made when people, particularly people with young children, are in obvious need. I believe utterly that it's the state's responsibility to provide a social safety net, a basic social safety net. This isn't handouts, but a roof over your head is actually pretty fundamental. What is the alternative for them? I was in Work and Income today when one of them was basically told that she should go to the night shelter if she couldn't find a motel that would take her. They weren't going to do anything about it. But, I just think that's wrong. I don't think that's, and I ask myself, what has the system come to? So what I want is for Housing New Zealand to say, okay, we've got a house that you can take. It's probably not going to be that great a house. It's a Housing New Zealand house. As long as it's got basic insulation and, it doesn't have holes in the walls, then that's the bottom line. And I think that everybody is entitled to that in New Zealand. And I ask myself, if they can't get a house, then what sort of society do we have? What sort of community do we have?
How long are you going to stay there in the Octagon?
I don't know. I seriously don't know. It's not easy. I'm really tired. I am out of my comfort zone. Been feeling a bit emotional today, but I've taken a stand and I have to see it through. So I don't think it's too much to ask. And I'm a politician. I'm supposed to advocate for people, and I kind of feel like I know this is a bit extreme, it's a bit radical, but I am trying to do my job. You know, I know there's an election coming up. People say, oh, it's a political stunt. Well, you know, I'd like to see any other politician in the country go and spend 3 or 4 nights in a tent in the middle of Dunedin, you know, to win a few votes. This isn't about me, and you know, there is no branding. I'm not making this about the political branding or an election campaign. I'm making it about raising awareness of homelessness, just how awful it is for people, and about trying to get a house for 2 young women who really need it for their kids.
That's Dunedin South MP Clare Curran. And in a statement a short time ago, the Ministry of Social Development says the 2 women have a high priority rating, but because they've repeatedly exhibited unattractive antisocial behaviour to both landlords and motel owners, it's been difficult to find them permanent accommodation in Dunedin. And the Ministry's Southern Regional Commissioner Sue Risman says following events overnight, yet another motel is not willing to house one of the women, and only late today was a short-term alternative was found. We encourage both women to reach out to friends and family for shelter and support, particularly for the sake of their children. She goes on to say the people we work with often have a number of hurdles to overcome, and many lead chaotic lives. We offer support to help address these, but for this to have real effect and lasting change in people's lives, they have to be part of the solution as well. We're now making their accommodation repayable. We have no other options. This is taxpayer money, and they have not met the most basic of their obligations. Nevertheless, we will continue to work to find these clients more stable, sustainable places to call home. It's what their children deserve.